so much. So again, I'm very excited to be here today. I'm very passionate about teaching. I'm very passionate about biomechanics. So being able to put those two things together has been really fun for me for this presentation. Um, I did provide a PDF copy of the presentation, so that should be also sent out at some point so that you can have access to that. Just in the presentation today, there's going to be a lot of stuff. I'm not going to read every word to you because I think you can work through some of that on your own, but I will go over a lot of stuff today about using AI to hopefully enhance your teaching practices and to improve student outcomes. Just a little bit more about me. I am an associate professor of health and exercise science at Transylvania University, which is in Lexington, Kentucky. I am a director in what's called our Digital Liberal Arts Initiative, which focuses on bringing digital technologies into the classroom, specifically towards improving liberal arts educations in particular. And I have been a member of ASB since 2017, and I have been on the ASB's education committee since 2002. So we've been working hard to try and improve education initiatives at those ASB meetings. I want to start with a disclaimer. Actually, before I do the disclaimer, I'm working on multiple screens. So if you see me looking one direction and then back the other, I'm looking at two screens. So please just note that as I look back and forth. So let's talk first about my AI disclaimer. I did use ChatGPT 4.0 with Canvas, which is the paid version of ChatGPT with a new beta Canvas that it's using. And it was used in the co-creation of this presentation. And I'm going to disclose to you the following ways in which I used it. I used it to brainstorm topics that could be included to help me provide examples. I did a little bit of rewording, maybe a grammar check here or there with chat. I also had it suggest any type of edits or limitations I might have had, or to assess overall quality of the presentation. Anywhere in the presentation that text was taken directly from the AI program without some form of editing, it will be cited in the text as ChatGPT. In some cases, I did do screenshots because it was just easier to screenshot things to show you. And if that's the case, there will be a citation at the bottom of the page where the citations appear. And then also I used OpenAI's DALL-E program, which OpenAI also is the creator of ChatGPT. I used them to create images in the presentation. So you will also see credit at the bottom of the screen when there was a AI created image used. So let's get started with just what we're going to cover today. Typically, look at the bottom of the screen there at the bullet points. We're going to cover three things today. We're going to cover how to create AI-enhanced assignments and assessments, how you can select AI tools, and then creating syllabus statements. The first bullet, the creating assignments and assessments, that's really where I'm going to focus today because I think that's the most practical and actionable strategies for us in education to get started with. I want to remind us, and we probably already all know this, but biomechanics has always been a digital forward field of study. We have always been trying to find ways to leverage technology to better assess movements, not just of humans, but animals and anything else in the world that really moves. And we've been using technology forever. We used, cameras to create those stop motion pictures of images, just like Muybridge did in the late 1800s, early 1900s. There is the picture on the bottom left, and then all the way up until modern gait analysis and motion capture that we're using today. And now we're seeing how things like virtual reality and artificial intelligence are being incorporated into this sort of bucket of technology that biomechanists, teaching and researchers can use to help assess, analyze, and improve movement for humans as well as animals. And I'm really excited just to think about where we're going to go in the future, because obviously this technology is rapidly changing. And what we say today in this presentation will be out of date in 6 months to a year from now. So literally with this rapid advancement, I'm just so excited about where we are going to go in the future. So getting to the meat of today, I really want to focus on two big areas. First is leveraging AI for pedagogy, and then using AI to improve student learning outcomes. For the pedagogy piece, we're going to focus first on course development, creating assignments and assessments, and grading using AI. And I want to hopefully walk you through some actionable strategies with examples from ChatGPT that I have run through there to give you sort of an idea of the strengths and the weaknesses and sort of how I have used it in the past. Before we go there, I want to inform you that there is a lot of research on AI going on right now. Just go to Google Scholar to start out, type in AI, higher education. You're going to get a ton of hits, especially in the last 2 years since ChatGPT has really exploded and had all of this sort of advancement in the last 2 years. There's so much research on AI, and not just in the classroom, but things like AI literacy is exploding in terms of the number of publications being put out in the world for us to digest. So I encourage you to just do that. Like, get out there, see what's being published. Again, it'll be out of date in a year because the advancements. But for now, I pulled out just a few articles that I have used recently and read recently. One from 2024, almost all of them are from this year. It lets us know that AI is helping faculty, and it's helping us in ways that allow us to sort of streamline instructional design and administrative tasks, like those things that take forever to do but are more repetitive, like writing those recommendations and writing emails and announcements for our students. There's so many sort of administrative type things that we're doing that can be helped along with AI that allows us to spend more one-on-one time with our students. And that's what the research is showing us. And research is also showing us that incorporating AI into your pedagogy can increase student engagement, which obviously we're always thinking about. How can I get my students excited? And it also can increase inclusivity and the adaptability of your classroom and thinking about things like accommodations and how can I ensure that all of my material is accessible for my students. So how can you use AI for course development? First and foremost, I think about course design. Maybe you are going to be asked to teach a new class that you've never taught before, and you can figure out where do you start? First and foremost, typically before we go out and look for a textbook, right? We get the textbook, we'd read through it, we'd look up things. Well, maybe AI can be a good place to start. It can help you think about relevant topics towards a particular class. It can actually help you create a course outline. So what topics do I need to include? What would a particular outline look like? And anywhere that you see a bolded and underlined something, that's where I'm going to focus my example on in the next couple of slides. So don't freak out that that was underlined. That's just showing you that what we're going to focus on for the example. AI can also help assess your courses that you're teaching for content improvements. Perhaps you understand that maybe the classroom felt rushed this year. What can I incorporate and continue to use? What maybe can I back away from? You can actually look at all of the metrics on your classroom and have AI help you find trends or places that you could improve in your classroom management. It can I already mentioned accessibility. It can help you improve that content. Because when we're in this world, in this today's age, we think a lot about accommodations with our students and how can I ensure that all the material that I'm utilizing can be utilized by my students most effectively and appropriately and in diverse and inclusive ways. So when you're thinking about AI, it can be a really great program to help you sort of diversify that accessibility experience for your students. So you can take text and then turn it into audio using AI. You can take audio and turn it into text and various other ways. So pretty much any medium you can think of, there is some sort of program out there, whether it's paid or free, that you can get that can help you sort of transition between those formats for your students. It can help you enrich your classroom content. Sometimes maybe we need a better example, or maybe we're using too many PowerPoints and or too many articles and we want to diversify that. Maybe AI can be a way to help you find other resources and such as like multimedia resources. Maybe it can help you find videos or podcasts that just aren't popping up for you when you're doing your own search. So it can be a way to enrich that course content in a way. This has really been an interesting avenue. Virtual teaching assistants, or what's called custom GPTs, especially with Chat GPT, there's a way in which you can create a sort of teaching assistant just for your classroom. A friend of mine from Elon University, he's also a biomechanist, he shared with us his biomechanics focused custom GPT. And what you do with that is you take pretty much all of your classroom material. You would take your syllabus, you would take any of your PowerPoints or lectures or videos that you have, audio podcasts, any course material that the students would have access to, and you actually load that into the AI program. And then the AI program learns specifically from your material, and then you can tell it had what sort of personality you want it to have. I need you to be a teaching assistant that is going to be excited about biomechanics and encourage my students to learn about this material. And then when students go into that program, they have this interactive sort of teaching assistant that they can work with to help with study materials, to ask questions. And what that does is, we've all, right before test time or, big project time, we flooded with emails of things that if you just want to be like, did you look at the syllabus? Did you read inside the assignment, right? Like all of those details, they're in there usually, that sometimes students are asking for. And if you had a custom GPT with all that information in there, they could easily go there and first and try to get their questions answered before they reach out to us with something that obviously we know is read the syllabus, or read the assignment. It's in there. Or you highlight and copy and paste it to them, right? So this can be a way, again, to help facilitate course development. Can also help you gamify your content and your material. I know there's a huge body of research around gamification in the classroom and how it improves engagement and retention of material, and just students love to play games in the classroom, right? I know many of us have probably played Jeopardy with our classes before at some point in other games, and so taking that course material and then asking, the AI to help you create some sort of game with it is one way to really think about something exciting and changing the way you're interacting with your students. And also particular things that it can help you with is creating simulations or case learning examples. So I know if you think about the more the clinical side of biomechanics and those learning physical therapy, doctors, whatever it is on the clinical side, you could have case-based examples. If I had, help me brainstorm a case for, I have a patient that is X number of years old that has this condition, give me examples or things that I could use as maybe a case or a simulation for your students to work through. It also is great at creating templates, thinking about your syllabi, course outlines, announcements, emails, rubrics, all of these things that we use repetitively. Can you get some templates out of this and continually sort of input information into those templates? So those are a lot of different ways that you can use AI in your course development. I'm going to give you a quick example of creating course outlines. So I opened ChatGPT 4.0 with Canvas, which again is the paid version. And this was my prompt: to create a 6-week accelerated course for an undergraduate biomechanics course. The course is online and asynchronous, include the following topics: linear and angular kinematics and kinetics, and force and torque. So I'm just going to quickly walk through some of the pictures. So this was the actual screenshots from the outputs, and you can see that here it has provided me with a week-by-week format for my course. And for each one of those, it includes the topics that should be covered each week, the activities that I should include in my classroom, and then any assignments. And you can see that each week sort of has a theme that we're going along with. And then looking at weeks 3 through 5, and then week 6 is over here on the right-hand side, you can see that it continues to work through those materials. And if you take a look at this, it's not great, it's not perfect. Maybe some things have more overlap than you would like. Maybe some of these things are leaving some gaps. And when you start to read through this, you're going to notice those. You're like, oh, this is where I need to add this, or maybe this would fit better in this week. But what it does is it saves you that time from having to start from a blank piece of paper. And a lot of the time, I know it takes me a long time to get my thoughts down on paper. So if I have already a starting point, even if I'm not excited about how all of the material in that starting point, at least it gives you something to work from and to start thinking about. And you can see here at the end, it sort of gives you learning resources. It tells you what things you should look for, but it doesn't give you the resources, right? It says you should look for lecture videos or reading materials. Well, that's where you go on and you iterate, and you can say, okay, you mentioned I should have reading materials. What would you suggest for this topic? So when I think about AI and when I'm teaching AI to other faculty members at my institution, I talk about that iterative learning that the AI does and that iterative conversation you can have. And you can do that with the AI. You can say, hey, you said I should have reading materials on force and biomechanics. Can you give me a list of potential materials that I could use in my class? So let's talk now about assessment. AI is really good at creating things for you. And by things, I mean things like tests or quizzes or open-ended questions. You can give it a topic and it will start to create these different types of assignments and assessments for you. It's really great at creating a test bank for you that with answers already highlighted. So I know that, if we're using our LMS or learning management system, you can sometimes input those test banks in there. Chat's a great way, or any other AI program is a great way to create a test bank with potential answers already highlighted for you. It's also really great at adaptive assignments and adaptive learning design. And I know a lot of the textbook companies are moving towards this with their AI programs, and incorporating AI and allowing the students to work through the course material, and that learning be adaptive to how they're responding and how they're achieving in that online environment. And you can also do that in your own classroom. You can have these programs help you think about adaptive design. And if a student, is not working well through the material, how could we adapt this so that it could potentially, the student could be more active and achieve well. It also is really great at rewording and rearranging a test for a new semester. And I know good pedagogy practices tell us we should never use the same assessments over and over, because I don't care how locked down you have this, they will find a way to have it, and it will be somewhere online. And I know that's always something we're thinking about is, if I put this question out there, the students will find it online and find the answer. So being able to have that ability to just quickly throw in an exam and say, hey, can you just reword these and, change up the ABC, or true, false, and it will do that for you pretty effectively. Again, diversifying content and formats for your students, this can be so important. So if you have, let's say, a video that you've created that you want your students to watch, but you don't have closed captioning on that, you can take your video, load it into these AI programs, and it will create a transcript. Will it be perfect? Absolutely not. But it gives you, again, a starting point so that you don't have to go through and constantly type out all of the things like we used to have to do with closed captioning. So thinking about diversifying that format for your assessments. Again, simulation and case-based assessments. Maybe you want your students to do a case-based assignment for an assessment for learning. I really like the idea of this last bullet, which is data-driven insights for improvement. And I know we all get course evaluations, right? They're not that great all the time. They're not asking the important questions all the time. They're asking more generic questions. And so if we as educators can take perhaps our student learning outcomes, de-identify them, feed that into the AI, and have it think about what areas of improvement we could work on. Perhaps there's one or two assignments or one topic that your students just aren't learning as well or achieving as well. And you can go in, you can have AI help identify those things, and then you can come back to your course design and your material and say, this is where I need to focus sort of my rewrite and my reassessment for this particular semester. I'll show you about a quiz really quickly that Kat helped me create. So my prompt was, here is a lecture on linear kinematics. Create a 15-question quiz on this material. Vary the question format using true, false, and multiple choice. I uploaded a 35-slide PowerPoint that I actually do use in class on linear kinematics. And here's the first 3 questions that it gave me of the 15. I created 2 true, false, and 1 multiple choice. You can see that the true, false says linear kinematics describes the motion of objects without reference to the forces causing motion. True or false? And I'm not going to read those other questions to you. You can be looking at those. But I realized I didn't ask it for answers. So I followed that up with a second prompt and iterated and said, can you please provide me with an answer key and an explanation for each question, which again can help us during grading, or if you're going to do, which I'm going to show you in a minute, which is use AI to grade, it's really helpful for that as well. So you can see here, this was the next piece. It gave me the answer. So question 1 that said linear kinematics describes the motion of objects without reference to the forces causing the motion. Is that true or false? Yes, it is true. And there was the explanation. And I will tell you, once you read through these, you're going to see that it did really, really good creating questions, especially since that was actual material from my PowerPoint. But I wasn't too excited about question 3 and the way it worded things. So if you go back to question 3, it says, which of the following best describes displacements? And the correct answer was supposed to be B, the change in position of an object from its starting point, which technically, yeah, that's correct. I think it could be more clear in its sort of answer. So that's one of the things I wanted to tell you is that when you create these quizzes, you can't just throw them out there for the students. We have got to look at them. We got to make sure it's worded correctly and appropriately because it's not perfect. It doesn't know the things that we know. And while technically those of us looking at that question, you could say that would be correct, there is, in my opinion, a better way to say that. And I absolutely hate the explanation. It says displacement refers to how far out of place an object is, considering its starting and ending points. What does that even mean? I have no clue. Like, I don't like that. And so you can see that while it did help me, it didn't do perfect. So again, please verify, please look at these, read through them. Don't ever take anything that this creates for you verbatim, because I promise you, especially in a field like biomechanics, which while we're not very niche, it is sort of a niche field in terms of the broader field of exercise science that we sort of tend to fall under, or engineering or any of that. And it doesn't know us as well as it knows other things, right? So thinking about that and ensuring that it's saying the things you want it to say is so, so important. So I mentioned grading just for a moment. So AI can grade things. It can auto grade objective things really well. So true, false, multiple choice, things that have a definite answer. So if you feed it a exam of a student and that exam is very explicit in terms of auto grading, like it would be, let's say, Canvas or another LMS, it's going to do a good job at that, especially if you feed it the answers. What it's not going to do as good of a job at is the open-ended questions. You can tell it to look for specific things, but it's, again, always going to miss that. And it's not going to find those subtle things that our students say that we're like, okay, they actually do get it, even though they didn't have the right maybe wording to say the exact same thing. It's like, but the example you gave actually does show me that you knew what you were saying. So it doesn't do those subtleties well in open-ended questions. It also can work really well to help you be more consistent in your grading practices. So on, for example, those open-ended questions, you can feed it in all the open-ended questions for question B, let's say. And maybe you ask your students to describe, the forces during heel strike, during the gate cycle. And you want to know those vertical, ground reaction forces, what that would look like. You could have all your students' responses, the correct instructor response, and you can see how consistent maybe you were in grading that. It's a really interesting way to check yourself for consistency. For those students who are uploading large papers and essays that we need to be reading and grading, it can summarize things for us. So you can feed it in a paper from your student and ask for a summarization of that. You could ask it for looking for specific information, and it can help you find things in your student work. It also works really well. Well, it works for rubric-based grading. It's really good at making rubrics and helping you make them, but the grading, again, there's subtleties that we as educators are looking for that it doesn't always pick up on, which you will see in my example in a moment. It can help you with formative feedback and creating comments. So you could feed it in, again, students' work. You can tell it what was wrong with the student work, and it can help you sort of identify areas and places to put those comments, or even suggest comments for you based off of your rubric or anything like that. Again, you'll see that in a moment. Research has shown us that AI actually helps students do peer review better and peer grading better, because while we are considered the experts in grading, right? When we ask our students to do peer review and peer grading, they're not, even if we give them a rubric, they're not that great at doing the subtleties, right? And picking up on the things that we would pick up on when grading. But what it has shown, research, is that when you're doing that peer review and peer grading, the use of AI during that process helps students give better feedback on that work to other students, which I think is a really interesting way to start thinking about grading and student work. I'll tell you, all the research tells us plagiarism detection in AI and identifying if AI was used, it doesn't work. All the research says so. I've given you a couple links here of different research studies that have compared different AI detectors, and the consensus is just don't use it like that. You cannot blindly take this AI program, have it grade something and identify if there was plagiarism or AI use in it. It's just not doing a good job right now. And what they're saying is the best practices to identify AI and plagiarism is tried and true method. You know your students and you know how they write, you know how they are talking to you in the classroom and interacting in the classroom. We are still the best detector. You can still use it. I mean, I know we all use, we use Turnitin and other programs to identify plagiarism, especially from online sources. But in terms of identifying when AI has been used and plagiarism AI work, they can't do it. So just keep that in the back of your mind when you're grading AI. Oh, here's my example. I like when you're going to see with my prompts, I talk to AI like it's a person. So you're going to see me talking to it strangely. And it's fine because I call it an entity. It's not a person, but that's how I tend to interact with it. So my prompt is, I'm going to have you grade a presentation for me. I have a rubric that's a PDF and a presentation that's a PowerPoint. Please grade the presentation based off the rubric, providing the score for each section of the rubric, an explanation for each section with comments on their score, and an overall grade. And so what I actually did was, from my biomechanics class last semester, I took my rubric that I used to grade my students' final presentations, and I de-identified a student presentation and uploaded it. And this is the table that it gives me at the end. So it gave me a table for each section of the presentation. You'll see that they have an intro, description of movement. They have some quantitative assessments of motion and force, have them link it back to biomechanical principles, how this movement could be modified for other populations. They have to review an article, and then some style things about how they present it. And you'll see also I have them put notes in the text that I grade. And overall, based off of my rubric and the presentation I fed in, it gave the student a B-. Okay. Now let's look at just an example of something it did good and something that it did not, something that it agreed with me on and something that we did not agree on, myself and the AI. So in the introduction, I have them introduce whatever movement they've been analyzing. They have to include, when it's used in sports or in exercise. And in this particular example, it was a free throw. They were analyzing a free throw. And then talk about the importance of the motion and what it accomplishes for that particular exercise or sport. And you can see that while it's only 2 total points, there are percentages of that point value that they can get based off of how they do well, how they present that material to me in their presentation. So Pat gave them a 75%. So it gave them that second section here. And it actually explains why it did that. It gives a brief introduction to the motion. It mentions sports and touches on the importance, but it lacked the sufficient depth to be detailed. So you can see it says detailed introduction there. And it says that, the comment is consider adding more detailed background of why the free throw is important in basketball and how biomechanics can optimize, performance in the free throw. And I actually agreed with that. So looking back at my actual rubric that I used to grade them at real live time, I also gave them a 75% on that one. On the quantitative assessment of force, so we were estimating forces, looking at sagittal plane in particular in this one. And to get 100% there, they had to include graphs of force and motion. So they had to do velocity, acceleration, momentum, and torque. We were estimating all of this. Obviously, we're doing 2D analysis. I'm at a small private liberal arts institution. We don't have a motion capture system. So we do 2D analysis using cell phones. And so obviously there's a lot of limitations there, but they had to provide a detailed assessment of those graphs and then use proper biomechanics terminology. It gave them a 50% on that. And you can see that they did, while they did provide the graphs, they were well constructed, but the descriptions were minimal. Well, I did not agree with that. I gave them a 75%. And I did that because when I have them create these PowerPoints, that I only have them put graphs on a slide. They don't actually put text with their graphs because I want them to say what's on the graph. And so I think it missed that because they did a lot more discussion verbally on the graphs that would have that added into the description there. And so that's why I think we had that discrepancy there. So you can see again, based off of the presentation that was presented to it, that was in PowerPoint format, it probably would have been a 50% because there was no discussion on the slides themselves, but they did that verbally. So that's why I think we had that discrepancy. So again, it's not perfect, but it tried really hard. And so then taking an overall sort of look at the grading there, I actually gave them a 91. So I gave them an A-. So it gave them a B-. I gave them an A-. We were a letter grade off. Is that perfect? No. Is it great? It's okay, right? It can give you a place to start. I wouldn't say that you should do this for all of your student, work, but certainly there is a place for it, especially for those formative assessments that are very easily graded. So overall message here for pedagogy, AI still hallucinates. I don't care how good this thing gets, and it does get better. I will say the chat GPT today and the chat 3.30, like a year ago, night and day difference in terms of hallucinations, but they're still there and it's still not perfect. And it's never going to know the nuanced things that we know about our classroom. So always know that there's always going to be incorrect or misleading results. And when I say results, I mean output from the AI. We need to be teaching ourselves and our students response validation here because they got to validate everything that comes out of here. I had AI, I said, please make me a meme about how AI hallucinates. And this is what it gave me. It said, when your AI thinks a cat is a toaster, classic hallucination. That's what it created. So there you go. This meme is an example of why we must validate, right? That's not even funny, but that's what it gave me. So don't trust it until you verify it in coming out of AI. All right, let's move on to students really quickly. What do I have, 18 more minutes? Are we going until 5? Okay, perfect. Let's talk a little bit about students and how AI can help you improve student learning outcomes in your classroom. I'm going to focus on 3 areas: how students can use it as a co-researcher, how students can use it as what I'm calling a study buddy, and how they can co-create content with it. Survey results are good right now. So in 2024, Pearson did a big comprehensive survey. AI students are reporting AI is helping them getting better grades. It's helping them be more efficient and most of them are really excited about AI and want to keep using it. We have seen that AI is being used more in students with higher academic workloads and used less in students who are actually more concerned about their grade. And so that's going to be really interesting to kind of see how that also continues to play out as we get more utilization of AI in the classroom. And then last but not least, I liked this one and I included it here because of the second bullet point, which is, students cannot rely solely on the AI because it impedes metacognitive growth. And I've seen a lot of research talking about how within this age of AI, we should no longer be thinking product, what can my students produce for me? But what is that process they took to get to that final product? Because in today's world, you can find just about all information on the internet in some capacity. So it's not the final answer that matters, but how did they evaluate getting to that final answer? And so I think that's why we cannot let our students completely rely on the AI because then they lose that whole piece, that process. Well, how are students using this as a co-researcher? And I have to say, as a researcher myself, I do this as well. So it's not just limited to students using this as a co-researcher. AI's getting pretty good at data analytics. It can analyze spreadsheets of data pretty well, especially if you're looking for really simple things like trends of means or standard deviations or things like that. It's doing pretty good. And it can create graphs and tables. I've had more luck with tables than graphs because the graphs aren't always perfect. I have to iterate a lot more to get what I want out of it. and sometimes it makes up data, which is fine, again, hallucinations. But it's getting better. It's doing okay, especially if you need mock data. I actually did this. I used AI to create a mock data set and had my students analyze it in class, looking at vertical ground reaction forces for a particular movement. And was it perfect? No, but the students, that it gave them a way to analyze something. And I didn't, and again, because I don't have a motion capture system, I don't have access to ready data to get my students some real data that I collected. So having that ability to have some data and create mock data for my students to use, it's been really cool. But they can do that as well. So they can take the data they collect in your classroom, analyze it for, and they can make graphs out of it, and then have suggestions for the way to display data. Because I know my students struggle with that sometimes, the graphical displays of data, especially undergrads when they're starting to get into that more data analytics, and we want them to be able to read and interpret and create graphs and tables appropriately. AI can be a good way to suggest how to do that for them. Can help them search and summarize for information. Again, think about a topic, think about the big trends around a topic, find resources or other avenues to explore around a topic. Can help them analyze text, image, or video. I took a picture of my cat laying in the cat bed the other day, fed it into chat and said, can you tell me what's in this image? And obviously it told me perfectly. And then I said, can you recreate the image, in a cartoon style? And it did, and it was beautiful. I mean, the cat was just as pretty as my cat. So it can do all of these things for us. Here's my example, which again is for analyzing text. So I said, provide me with a list of key points for this article, focus on the methods and the results and what the limitations were and how they were addressed. I took one of my own articles just because I know it, right? And if I upload that, I'll know if it was wrong. So I did that. And I took this article about chest kinematics and during studies, during breathing, during steady state walking and adolescent idiopathic scoliosis. And I said, give me the key points. And you can see it actually did a really amazing job. It gave me all the key points on the methodology, talked about the study design, the participants, the measurements, the different phases that we went through while we were testing. And then you can see I made them a little smaller. I'm not going to read this to you, but you can see that then it gave me a summary of the results. Didn't give me actual hard numbers, but it told me whether things were significant or not. And then it gave me those limitations and how they were addressed. And I have to say, knowing the article, having read this, it did a good job. Well, I will tell you though, what it doesn't do well is if you ask it to analyze text, write something and cite it appropriately from the text. While it can give you a great summary like this so that students can go back into the article, find those places to cite and, cite information that way, it does not do that well. I uploaded another article and I said, can you give me a direct quotation that I can use on this, on this particular result for this article, citing in text, where appropriate. It told me something was on page 60. This was a 3-page article, and it was in from the 101s to the 104s or something like that. And there was nowhere was there a page 60. It completely hallucinated those things. So, and the quote wasn't perfect. It didn't pull a perfect quote out. It gave me more of a reworded quote. Again, not perfect. And use this thing as a study buddy. They can identify themes and keywords in different text and PowerPoints. Can help them solve problems. I know we do a lot of math problems in biomechanics and engineering and our related fields. It's doing great with coding. I have to say that I'm seeing a lot of coding you hear with the AI. Help them take notes, do note cards, create study guides, create quizzes, flashcards, mock tests. Again, you can do those intelligent tutoring systems or programs, which is pretty much what I mentioned before when we were creating custom GPDs to have a study buddy or a tutor, a TA for your students. So my example this time is a math solver, and this will be fun for all of us. So I said, I uploaded the picture on the right. So this is an actual biomechanics question that's in the biomechanics book that I use with my classroom. And it says, Daisy's walking across the platform. Her peak vertical reaction force is 1,200 newtons acting upward, and the braking frictional force is 200 newtons acting back. How large is the resulting force, and what is the direction of the resulting force? And I fed that image in, and I said, what are the steps to solving this problem? Again, I'm not going to read things to you, but this was chat's output on the left and the textbook recommended answer on the right. So this is the step-by-step solution by chat. You can see it's giving an understanding of the problem, reiterating the problem for you at the top, and it's showing you here that what forces should be on which X and Y axis. And it says that when you put them perpendicular, they form a triangle. That's exactly what the first step in the textbook solving is to create a right triangle out of these, right? So here, we're doing good so far. Now it wants you to calculate that resultant magnitude force. It wants you to use Pythagoras, and it walks you through that. Lo and behold, it did really well there, right? It's almost, I mean, yes, it flip-flopped these two, but it still get the right answer, right? So looking at this so far, we're doing great walking through this problem. This is where we get tricky. So to get the resultant force vector itself, you got to use the trig, got to use tangent with this triangle. And when it solved this, it decided that it was 9 degrees to the left of the vertical y-axis. When you solve this thing for the actual resultant force, it's 80.5. You look at those two things, you're like, well, that's completely wrong. But is it? Those are complementary angles. And so while what they did was actually it flip-flopped what it was looking at as the vertical and the forces, looking at which was the the tangent when doing the opposite over adjacent there. And so it flip-flopped those. So while technically, if you're looking for 80.5, it got the wrong answer, but it got that complementary angle. So would it be wrong? Yeah, maybe yes, maybe no. Depends on how you grade things, right? And it depends on whether the student would understand that that's a complementary angle and why we would actually almost want the other angle instead of the 9.5, right? So thinking about this and how it walks students through how to do this problem, it's not perfect, but it tried really hard and it got 90% right, right? So now let's talk just briefly about AI as a collaborator of content. This AI can create anything. If you can think of it, AI, there's an AI program out there. It'll create anything for you: text, presentations, images, video, audio. Students are using this a lot as a co-writer, which is why I sort of focus on that in this particular example. You can use this for grammar, word processing, tone, reading level, audience, restructuring something. Rewording is huge. I've had my students use it a lot that way. Generate ideas, generate an outline, assess for strengths and weaknesses. You can also do a DEI assessment on your writing as well. My rewording example, it says, can you suggest rewording for this paragraph? Make sure the tone is scientific and use proper biomechanics and nomenclature. Because that's one of the things my students miss a lot is something's bending. Oh, is it? Do things actually bend or do they flex and extend? Let's talk about that. And so that's one of the things that I hammer home to my students is proper the way we speak in biomechanics. And so this was actually the first paragraph in a method section of a lab that I do with my students. I fed that into the AI and it reworded that paragraph. It wasn't, I'm not going to read it to you. You have the PDF, you can read this for yourself. It did okay. I mean, the paragraph wasn't horribly written already, and it reworded some things, added some new words here or there. The thing wasn't too excited about one of the sentences that it reworded, which is the fourth one in. It says the maximal test comprised the Australian treadmill test. I didn't like the way it said that. I actually liked the way my students had conducted better. So, I mean, can you take it or leave it? Yes. Did it completely change what they did? No. So I think, if you were to look at content-wise, it's still about 90% the same content. So would you cite that? I probably wouldn't have my students cite that since it was very minimal changes. How do you choose the right AI tool for you in your classroom? Depends on what you're doing. Like I said, I briefly said this already, but there are so many AI programs out there, both paid and free. You just really have to figure out what it is you want your student to do. I focus in on OpenAI right now. I'm using, obviously, ChatGPT. I use Dolly for images, and that's all by OpenAI. but there's so many others. There's Anthropic that does Claude, and Claude is getting almost as good, and well, it's as good as Chat in terms of text, but it's getting better at non-text. Doesn't do images yet, but it may in the future. Then you have what I'm calling sort of system-wide AI programs, like Apple Intelligence just unveiled, right? It's doing really neat things in email, by the way. I'm loving my Apple Intelligence on my email with its ability to summarize long email, chains for me. You got Gemini for Google, and it's doing some great things there. I'm sure every time you go to a Google search now, you get the AI at the top, depending on what you asked it. And then Microsoft has Copilot. So I mean, all these large major, cross-platform, what I'm calling cross-platform, companies that work with education in particular, they're incorporating AI. Our students can't get away from it. It's there. They're using it. We're using it. But one thing that I will encourage you to do, and then I will be done, is that everyone must use an AI syllabus statement. If you do nothing else from this presentation, take this away from it, because that is the only way that you can have any say whatsoever in what your students are doing in the classroom with AI. You got to set tone from day one. What doesn't matter what system you prescribe to, whether it's like the traffic light, which is what people are saying, are you prohibiting this? Are you using it with certain boundaries? Or are you encouraging them just to have a free-for-all, right? It depends on your classroom. Do you have one classroom policy, or do you change depending on the assignment? Maybe you're using mostly that yellow phase in the middle there, where you're going to have, very specific instructions on when they can and when they can't use it. You also need to have a clear citation policy for when and how they do this. And I have given you my 2 examples that I'm going to be using next semester. I'm actually on sabbatical right now, so I'm not teaching currently, but next semester I have my syllabi ready, and this QR code should take you to my 2 syllabi statements that I'm going to be using. One is for biomechanics, and one is for a senior seminar in our major that I'm teaching. I am going to stop there and ask you if you have any questions about AI. I know I threw a lot of information at you with a lot of examples. I did not read everything to you. I encourage you to go back to the PDF and look through things. And you can always email me with questions. My email's there. But yeah, I want to know what your experience is. Are you using AI in the classroom in any of these ways? Is it working well? Is it not? I mean, does anyone have questions about anything that I said? I love talking about AI. I see, it looks like, is it Eva has a hand up?
Hi, it's Eva. Close enough.
Eva.
Everybody gets it.
Is
Yeah,
Eva?
it's fine.
Yeah.
Yes, I have a couple of questions actually. The first one is, what chatbot was your friend using that created the biomechanics teaching assistant?
Yep, it was ChatGPT. ChatGPT
Okay.
right now is really the only one that's allowing paid users to go in and create these custom GPTs. So I would suggest ChatGPT if that's something that you're interested in for TAing with your students. I'm going to click over. Can you still see my screen?
Yes.
It's called, I don't think he would mind me sharing this with you. His name is Matt Wittenstein. He's from Elon University. So if you like this and you're interested, he also presented with me at the last ASB for our teaching tutorial on AI. And he created the Biomecha Thinker here. And again, when you click on this, it looks a lot like ChatGPT, but it only looks at the information he fed into it, which was classroom based. So again, you can, if you're interested in that, please email me and I'll connect the 2 of you, and he can kind of tell you how he did that. But he did use ChatGPT.
Gotcha. And I do have the paid ChatGPT, but I don't see the with Canvas on my.
It's right here now. It's 4.0 is what most people have access to, and then there's the beta with Canvas.
I think it's because I've got the app and I'm not going through the web page.
Oh yeah. No, it doesn't do it on the app. You have to go through the web browser. Yeah, it opens up a bigger. The ability to use it is more effective, in my opinion, on a browser and not in the app. And I said I would show this if you all are interested. This is my chat. This is how big my chat was when I was creating this PowerPoint for you. starting right here. This is when I started asking it here, can you please create for me where did it go? Here we go. Here's where it was working out the problem, right? So here is my prompt. It says, here's my picture. It says, what are the steps to solving this problem? And you can see here how it walked me through that. And then here again, can you suggest rewording of this paragraph? It did that. This is what the canvas looks like. It now actually will pull up an editable format for you. You can go in here and you can type, edit, you can ask it to change things in real time, which has been really, really helpful. It's only in beta though, but you can see way down here at the bottom, here's that reworded paragraph that it created for me. And I created everything, including the title of this presentation for you. Let me go all the way back to the top for you so you can see this. See all my images there that I worked through trying to get the right images for the presentation that I wanted. And you can see all the way at the top, I am creating a presentation for a group of women biomechanists. Here's the abstract. Give me some titles. And I actually used number 3 with educators at the end and not education. So you can see that it helped me. It helped me a lot. It helped me create, if you go back to my presentation, that image in the background there. I went through several iterations before I finally found what I wanted to use there. So you can see that I was constantly, this is great, but can you take the words away? This is good, but can you suggest a banner? Can you make the image widescreen? You can constantly iterate and ask for different things with the program. You can see I used this significantly to come up with the presentation, citing where I felt appropriate. Allison has a question.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. It's really interesting. I'm just curious if you have any thoughts about, or anything about, if there's any issue, like if you're getting it to grade things for you or summarize material, like uploading students' work to ChatGPT, because I assume they store everything that you give to it.
That's a great question. So currently right now with ChatGPT, there is an option in the settings to tell it not to remember anything that you upload or that you have for it. Let me see if I can find it. It's under security, I think. No, not security. General, maybe. It's somewhere in here. Memory. Here it is. You can actually turn off the memory, which means it won't remember things and it won't use any information. And you can actually set that. So if you make your own custom, you can tell it not to remember things. And so if you tell it this, it doesn't remember who you are and what you're doing. But I would always de-identify student work before I put it in, because if you don't have that setting on, or, who knows what it's really using and what it's not, right? They say, I'm not a conspiracy person or anything like that, but you just never know what's going on in the background. So better safe than sorry. I would rather de-identify my students' work before putting it in, because if it is learning from that, it could be learning the wrong things from your student work, right? I would personally, if I was going to grade with it, I would create a custom GPT just for grading and have it not remember anything, so that as I feed it material and student work that's been de-identified, that it wouldn't pick up on trends, it wouldn't think and remember certain things. Because as of right now, you saw that memory for mine was on, and it remembers me, it remembers things. So it knows that as I was creating images, I like to do a lot of abstract images for background images. And so everything it was giving me was abstract. And I was like, stop it with the abstract. I need something less abstract. I need a real image here. And so, but it remembered that that's what I preferred most of the time. And so it will remember things about you. And it's kind of funny. Let me see if I can find the setting about personalization. If you go to manage the memory, what does it know about me? See, my wife and I, we share this. So sometimes it picks up on her as well as me. So it says that is a professor teaching an undergraduate research methods course, is going to start a program, is going to start using the program Unity. I'm a college professor who's presenting on AI. So it remembers these little things about me, so that when it's answering things for me, it remembers those things, almost like, the memory of a colleague, and that's what they're trying to mimic, is that more personalized, interaction. But you can tell it absolutely don't do that, and you can clear it out whenever you want. And so I suggest looking behind the scenes at all the settings, privacy settings, because I would not want it to actually know my students' names or anything like that. Did that answer your question? Sometimes I think I'm just chatting.
No, yeah, that was very helpful. Thank you.
And I know that like Claude has something similar. And so most of the AIs, they have those background settings that you can look into. And maybe that's one of the reasons you pick one over another, is that it has better security and better ability to not remember student work.